are in listen-only mode.
Thank you for joining us today. My name is Bill Baker, and we're pleased to have you with us for this webinar. This is part of the Crisis Coach webinar series. For the 2016 series, this is number 7. Today, we have a guest speaker, Ken Mercer, who's a pharmacist and also a Firestorm Principal. He's going to be talking about where'd everyone go? Managing communicable illness and other employee absences. Our emphasis is going to be on the Zika virus and its impact upon our employees. We'd also like you to become our friend on Facebook. You can follow us on Facebook, Firestorm Solutions. You can also follow us on Twitter, Firestorm Soul. And there is a hashtag. That hashtag is Crisis Coach. Firestorm transforms crisis into value and empowers you to manage risk and crises. Firestorm expertise is crisis management, critical decision support, crisis communications, crisis public relations, and consequence management. We do want to remind you that the presentation today is not complete without the accompanying oral comments and discussion. In addition, do not interpret this information as legal advice or legal opinion, and we recommend that you look at your organization's personal counsel for advice on the items that are discussed today. Firestorm is pleased to have this webinar series underwritten by the Greater Rochester Chamber of Commerce and the Eastern Great Lakes chapter of the Association of Contingency Planners. You can go to firestorm.com, watch past webinars in this series, and register for future webinars. Our good friend, Dr. Michael Redmond, is with us today. And Michael, I'll let you talk a little bit about the Eastern Great Lakes chapter, please.
Great. Well, our chapter specializes in business continuity, disaster recovery, cybersecurity, internal audit. We have seminars given every 2 months from really great speakers, and we also do, of course, the webinars with Firestone every month, and we have our annual symposium coming up all day on September 14th. That is only $55 for the entire day from 8 in the morning until 6 at night. So we encourage people to contact us. You can reach me directly if you want information on that at 917-882-5453, 917-882-5453. And thank you for the opportunity for us to share this webinar with you today.
Thank you, Dr. Redmond. There we go. I'd like to introduce our presenter today, Ken Mercer. Ken is a pharmacist. He's educated at West Virginia University. He's had over 29 years experience in hospitals and assisted living centers and in business for himself. He has a strong background. He operates in the Baltimore, Maryland area, and it's a pleasure to have Ken with us. Ken, over to you, please.
Well, good day, everyone. Thank you for taking the time to join us today. I'm delighted to have this opportunity to talk to you about communicable illness and the crisis that might represent to a business. I am a pharmacist, as Bill said, so I come to this topic with a healthcare background. I'm a business owner, I'm a manager, so I understand the implications of employee absenteeism, and that's what you will see as a result of a communicable illness pandemic is employee absenteeism. If we can reduce that, we have a win. I'm going to try to give you some things to think about today when managing or preparing to manage a communicable illness crisis where a significant amount of your workforce might be unavailable to work for you. I'm going to lastly offer some help from a Firestorm point of view. We have an audit tool that we can review your communicable illness plan or help you write one. I do want to apologize in advance if you hear Stella and Lorenzo in the background. My two dogs, sometimes my instruction isn't very clear to them when I say be quiet during my presentation. I'm not sure why that is misunderstood, but if you hear them, that's what we'll chalk it up to. I am in my home office today, so that's why you'll hear them. A crisis is any situation where your ability to run your business is impaired. Sometimes crises are the result of external forces and sometimes internal forces. But the one thing that is constant with any and all crises is that if you have thought about the crisis in advance and you have done some preparation work in advance of the crisis, your chances of managing through that crisis are improved. The outcome for your business is generally better. I remember I had an 8th grade history teacher who used to say, preparation is the key to success. What is a communicable illness? It's very simply, it's a disease whose causative agent is passed from one individual to another. It's passed in a number of different ways, directly or indirectly. Direct passage, a direct contact would be an exchange of bodily fluids, coming in contact with discharges from an open sore. Another example is inhaling respiratory droplets from a tuberculosis patient. That's how you will acquire tuberculosis. A second mode of transmission between people is indirect contact, where the infection is transmitted from you to an inanimate object. That might be a doorknob, it might be a toilet seat, it might be a drinking glass. If you drink drink from the same glass that someone that has the flu has drunk from, you may acquire the flu. That would be through indirect contact. And lastly, communicable illnesses are spread via vectors, varmints, I call them, flies, mosquitoes, rats. All of these things are capable of spreading disease. A pandemic poses a catastrophic risk to a human resource staff. More so in those businesses that rely on individuals in an office, in a place to do work. An example might be a manufacturer. You need people on a line, production line, to produce the goods and services that you're going to sell. People aren't there. You aren't producing goods as efficiently as you would. An example of an organization where a communicable illness may not be as problematic is something like a law firm, an attorney firm, or an accounting firm, where probably much of the work can be done remotely from home. Much of the work can probably proceed even without coming into the office, if you've practiced and rehearsed that in advance. So different businesses are going to be more susceptible to a communicable illness crisis than others. Schools are an example of one that might be very susceptible. The patient population that we're going to talk about today that is susceptible to the Zika virus are young women of childbearing age. That represents teachers, represents nurses, So if your organization is built around those kinds of personnel forces, you might be subject to a communicable illness crisis. History has taught us that during past pandemics in this country, up to 40% of the workforce is not available to work. These durations of absenteeism might extend a year and a half to 2 years. So these are extraordinarily long periods of time when you may be faced with an extraordinary absenteeism rate. Can your business tolerate that? The Spanish influenza of 1918 resulted in 500,000, 500,000 American deaths. The Asian flu of 1957 resulted in 70,000 American deaths. Just a few years ago, the H1N1 swine flu virus caused hospitalization of almost 100,000 Americans. The AIDS epidemic, the CDC estimates that 1.2 million Americans have the HIV infection at this time, and to date, about 650,000 Americans have died from the HIV infection. The Zika virus is going to be a little different. As we're going to talk about in a few slides, the symptoms of Zika, few people are going to die from a Zika infection. Many won't even know that they're sick. However, the absenteeism rate that you see with the Zika virus might be similar to these previous pandemics, and it's going to be the result of fear. Employees are fearful of coming to work, particularly that one patient population that we're going to talk about in a minute. And those folks might want to avoid acquiring this Zika virus in any way possible. One way would be to avoid coming to work. Have you thought about your tolerance for absenteeism? Do you know at what point is your tipping point? At what point the absenteeism rate does it become problematic, and does your business operate less efficiently? Excuse me. Different businesses are going to have different tolerances for absenteeism. So if you are one that is susceptible to, potentially susceptible to this, this might be something to watch out for. Communicable illness planning. Organizations need to thoroughly examine their HR policies and practices. Do those policies and practices address the long timeline of a pandemic? Do these policies talk about screening and monitoring? Do they take into consideration leave with pay, leave without pay in an extended absence situation? With any dealings that involve absenteeism and employee law, you have many laws to confront: federal, state, local laws. And have you thought about monitoring? Do you know what your employees are talking about? Do you know what they're worried about? Do you know what they're thinking about? Do you have a mechanism of gathering that intelligence? I assure you that they are talking about different things than they are presenting to you as a formal boss-employee relationship. Fear is what we will talk about most of today. It is the fear of acquiring Zika causing people not to come to work. Do your policies cover absenteeism due to fear? They probably do cover absenteeism due to hospitalization, illness, if you're too sick to come to work. But that is not going to be the case most of the time with the Zika virus. People are going to be afraid to come to work. The best combatant to fear is accurate, clear, direct communication and education. Educating your staff what to be afraid of and what not to be afraid of is important. And doing that early and often will hopefully trim this the fear that is going on in the community now. As a part of this, there will be a brief after this webinar. It'll probably be up in a couple of days. At the very end, I'll show you how to get that brief. It's just a summary of what we talked about today. Within that brief, there is a one-page Zika document written by the CDC. I saw it and I thought it represented an excellent example of good, simple, direct communication that can be used for any employees, any and all employees. It can be posted on bulletin boards, just a one-page piece of paper. It can be folded up and put in mail checks and payroll checks. It tells employees how to protect themselves against Zika. Those kinds of things that you ought to have in your bank account, in your file, that you can roll out on a moment's notice and deal with any rapidly expanding fear or any other crisis situations that you're faced with. The Zika virus is spread through mosquito bites and during unprotected sex. Most common symptoms of Zika virus disease are fever, rash, joint pain, and conjunctivitis, red eyes. None of those things sound very serious. Probably nobody goes to the hospital for those things. This illness is generally mild, symptoms lasting several days to a week. And again, a lot of people aren't going to even know that they're sick. A severe disease requiring hospitalization is very uncommon with Zika. However, the problem is the next bullet point. Zika has been linked to microcephaly. It's a serious birth defect where the virus is transferred from mom to fetus during pregnancy, and the baby is born with a smaller brain. That birth defect will cause lifelong developmental delays and lifelong problems for the child and the family. That is the fear-inducing part of this disease. People, women of childbearing age, are going to want to protect themselves from acquiring this. Mosquitoes have been called the deadliest animal in the world because of the diseases they spread. A female mosquito infected with Zika will continue biting people and spreading the disease over its lifespan of 30 days. There are 176 species of mosquitoes in the United States today that have been identified. Only 2 of those 176 have been known to carry the Zika virus. And just for a historical reference, Zika was first discovered in 1947 in an area of Uganda. So how does Zika spread? The mosquitoes that carry the Zika virus, the the two species of mosquito that carry the Zika virus are aggressive daytime biters, not so much at night. So protecting yourself from mosquito bites, particularly during the daytime, is the single most effective thing you can do to protect yourself. A mosquito becomes infected with the Zika virus when it bites a person who is infected with the Zika virus. So person has it, is bitten by a mosquito, that mosquito now has it and moves on to transmit that to the next human. It is also spread during sex with an infected male. There has been one single case report of Zika being transmitted from a female to a male, but almost entirely we are talking about the male infecting the female through unprotected sex. It is passed from the pregnant woman to the fetus during pregnancy or around the time of birth. That's the scary part. And it might be transmitted through blood transfusions, although that is not confirmed at this time. That has not been demonstrated at this time. So again, protecting yourself against daytime mosquito bites is the single most important thing that you can do. So where is the Zika virus? This is a slide showing our Western Hemisphere. The purple areas represent areas where Zika is prevalent. Mosquitoes are prevalent. You notice there's a lot of vacation areas on this slide. This is Central and South America and the Caribbean. Desirable places for people to go. The breaking news story, but you may have heard of a relatively big sporting event that's going to happen in just a couple of weeks in the center of this Zika territory called the Olympics. You are probably reading and hearing about athletes who are choosing not to go to Brazil out of fear of Zika virus. That's astonishing to me that this is a once-in-a-lifetime trip for most of these athletes every 4 years, and they are choosing not to go because they're afraid of this disease. Even some NBC is reporting that some of their staff are not willing to go to Zika, or I'm sorry, not willing to go to Brazil out of fear again. The August in Rio de Janeiro is not high mosquito season, but still people are avoiding it. The media coverage of this event has a way of fanning the flames of fear. You might see fellow employees who, if it's known that one of their colleagues has traveled to one of these areas, the Caribbean vacation areas, they may not want to be around them. The emotion of fear tends to develop legs of its own. It's often self-sustaining. It's like a snowball rolling down the mountain. If you catch the snowball early, you can stop it. If you wait too long, it's just a big, out-of-control snowball that you cannot stop. Interjecting a balancing of education among this fear is what will hold the tide back, hopefully. Effective, clear, direct communication and education, simple to understand, is what will lessen the fear of your employees and hopefully keep them at work. Within the United States, it's a graph showing known cases in the United States. This graph is a little old. The last number that I saw was there have been 1,300 cases of Zika in the continental United States. Almost all of those cases have been related to travel. So somebody traveled to one of those high-risk areas and they brought it back. We did have the first Zika-related death in the continental United States at the end of June, and that was in Utah. It is unknown how Zika contributed to this patient's death. He had other things going wrong, but he did have the Zika virus at the time of his death. So it is unknown how that contributed to his death. And then just Monday, this week, Monday, there was a report that did involve transmission of the Zika virus, and it did not involve travel nor sex. It's the first report like this. It also happened in Utah. It happened to a caregiver of a patient. There was a patient who had an extremely high titer of the virus in his blood, and this caregiver did not have sex with him, nor travel with him, nor any mosquito bites in the state of Utah, but still acquired the Zika virus. So it is unknown at this time how that happened, but these are the things that people read about and are fearful of. Again, this is one case in the United States that involved transmission of Zika, not related to travel nor sex. So where are these mosquitoes? Two graphs show the two species of mosquitoes that are carrying the Zika virus, the Aedes aegypti and the Aedes albopicus. The graphs reflect that this is primarily a southern phenomenon. It does extend some up to the northeast. Rochester on the very edge of the graph, but I would argue that fear isn't always rational. So if somebody is going to be afraid, if an epidemic of fear is going to set into your organization, it doesn't have to be rational. You still have the same thing to deal with and to manage. Who's at risk of Zika? It is the Zika infection during pregnancy. That is the real scary part, and that's what has been linked to the birth defect called microcephaly. The infant born with a smaller than normal brain will have lifelong developmental delays and lifelong complications. There have been a few reports of defects to the vision and hearing, but primarily it is this microcephaly that people are afraid of. And what do you do if you have Zika? You get plenty of rest. You drink fluids to prevent dehydration. One of the symptoms is fever. Fever causes dehydration. So plenty of fluids and medications to reduce fever, as acetaminophen, which is Tylenol, or ibuprofen, which is Motrin or Advil. And then lastly, you would like to protect, if you have Zika, you would like to protect yourself from mosquito bites. It's not to protect you anymore, you've already got it, but it's to protect others. Remember that the mosquito is acquiring the Zika virus from you and then transmitting it to the next human. So even if you have the Zika virus, protecting yourself from mosquito bites is a really responsible thing to do. I have 3 kids and I have 2 grandkids. All the parents in the room know that we'll do almost anything to protect our kids. And nobody wants to be burdened with this risk of microcephaly. Even the Catholic Church is struggling with their composition. In certain parts in Southern and South America, there is talk about avoiding
Ken, we seem to have lost you. Can you hear me? Ken? Ken, if you can hear me, log off, log back on, please. Let's give Ken a couple of minutes here. It appears that Dr. Redmond, can you hear me? Or have we lost everything completely?
I can.
Okay.
No, I'm here.
Okay. So Ken is gone. And
You know, it's interesting. While we're waiting for him, I was just thinking about the fact that a lot of companies, at least the companies that I'm familiar with, are still they're not training the people on what's different about Zika, what they can do to prepare, and it's something that I think this presentation is so important because of that, because companies are still saying, well, it's just about, we'll just plan on, if 50% of our people are out or 40% of our people are out, what do we do? But they're not treating them on how to prevent it, the mitigation, and I think what he's covering is really excellent.
That's right. And Ken was pointing out that fear seems to be the #1 problem here, that it is just so scary, the idea of Zika infecting a pregnant woman. I have a daughter-in-law who is just barely pregnant. We've got a wedding that we're going to be going to down in the lower Rio Grande Valley in about a month. And I am really very concerned that we want to make sure that she stays protected and doesn't get any mosquito bites while she's down in that area.
Yeah, I know when I had gone on safari years ago in Tanzania, and they have netting permanently set up above each of the beds, and at night you literally tie it down to the sides so that they're not even coming in. And it may seem like overkill, but I tied it in based on the number of mosquitoes and such that were there, and this is before there was the virus, just because I didn't feel like getting mosquito bites all night.
Right.
But it was very, very effective.
Mm-hmm. There have been some recent studies.
Hey, Bill.
Oh, you're back with us. Okay. Michael and I were just having this discussion. You're back?
Yeah, I apologize. I'm on my landline now, so I've got some feedback.
Okay, I think we got rid of the feedback.
I apologize. I'm not sure what. I still have feedback. So.
Oh, we'll fix that in a moment. Are you able to advance the slides? I
can, yes. Okay, here we go. I apologize.
Okay, you're back in business.
So to prevent Zika, what you I'm sorry, Bill. I've still got a lot of feedback. Here we go. Let's try this. Are you? Can you hear me?
Yes, good. Go ahead, Ken.
Okay. Protecting yourself against mosquito bites is the best thing that you can do. You wear long sleeve shirts, long pants, stay indoors, air conditioning, window screens, so that you keep the mosquitoes out. Do what you can to control mosquitoes outside your home too. Trying to eliminate standing water. Insect repellent. Spray your clothes with insect repellent. DEET, D-E-E-T, is a common insect repellent, works very effective. The only patient who can't have that is a baby younger than 2 months. All that you can do for those folks is mosquito netting. Any way that you can eliminate mosquito bites is the best thing that you can do. There is a statement about preventing mosquito bites for 3 weeks after travel to one of these areas. Again, you might come down with it. There's an incubation period, but the infectious period is about 7 days while you're sick. But for about 3 weeks after you return from travel is when you should protect yourself against from mosquito bites. Again, it's to prevent you from transmitting it to somebody else. A communicable illness plan is I'm going to start on the right-hand side of this slide. You see the colors, the green, the yellow, and the red color. I would argue that we are in a green stage now with Zika. We have human-to-human transmission of the disease, but it may not be affecting your organization too much yet. This is just the time to be observant, the time to get your message maps, your communication in order so that you can begin to roll it out. Some areas of the country might be in the yellow stage. This is the elevated stage where you are beginning to see absenteeism at work. If folks are fearful about acquiring the disease and they're calling out to avoid contracting it, you may be in an elevated stage where it's beginning to affect you. In the next stage, in the red stage, it's too late. This is when it is in your neighborhood and it's in your company. So you are impacted by this. This is now a crisis for you. If you don't have enough people to get your job done, you have a problem. The way to combat fear is early. In the green or the yellow stage, when you can effectively communicate and notify people what you're doing, how they should protect themselves, and what they don't need to be afraid of. I'm going to move quickly through this slide. I apologize. It's really busy. The only point I want to make on this slide is the complexity of a good communicable illness plan. There are a lot of things to consider in a good communicable illness plan. You have you need a good policy statement. You need monitoring and escalation plans. At what point do you advance up to the next level? moving from the green guarded stage to the yellow elevated stage. At what point do you do that? When do you know? There should be hard, fast triggers in a good plan to tell you, oh, we're right here now, okay, now we're going to do this. A well thought out, well documented plan. Message maps to all of your stakeholder groups, written well in advance, educational materials written well in advance. Your stakeholder groups that you need to communicate to are your employees, your customers, your board members. Maybe you practice telecommuting at this time. Maybe you can have some people stay home and not come to work. I would suggest that practicing this telecommuting before you start it is a good thing to do. Anybody that's ever taken their laptop home to do some work at home and plugged it in and realized that you didn't have access to 10 things that you need, practicing before you start is better. Some policy statements that you might want to include. The main thing you want to say to your staff, to your employees, is that you are there to maintain a safe and effective workplace. You want to keep employees safe, keep them productive. You want to minimize disruptions of normal work practices. This should be presented as an employee benefit. It's a benefit to the organization and it's a benefit to the employee. Again, we're talking about keeping people safe. Policy decisions, there are many. You might think about your cleaning. Do you have you studied what environmental fluids, environmental soaps and cleaners might be better to clean with? That would be a good thing to publicize to your staffs, to tell them, you know, what you're doing on their behalf. Have you thought about hand wash stations throughout your organization? These are kind of pedestal stands with a squeeze button trigger, dispenses some gel or a foam substance. It's an alcohol-based product. Squirt and rub your hands together. That you have washed your hands. Because I'm running out of time here, I'm gonna continue to move forward pretty quickly. Firestorm does have an audit tool. This slide represents a table of contents of one of the audit tools. It's a very detailed checklist of all things that can be considered in a good communicable illness plan. We'll talk about policies. We'll look at your insurance coverages. Are you covered? Do you have an insurance policy to cover an absenteeism like this? For a manufacturer, we would want to look at your vendor contracts. You might have a terrific communicable illness plan and be managing it very well, but if a supplier of a key part that you need to complete your production does not have a good plan and is not able to supply that part to you, you have now a supply chain problem. So there are many things to look at, many things to consider. Firestorm follows a predict, plan, perform methodology. There is a brief, there will be a brief at this link in a couple of days. Just click on it and download the brief. There is also a very good brief here at firestorm.com /Zika 2016. It's a brief from a virtual exercise that we did last month on June 14th. That is a very well written document. It's rich with information and the price is free. Click and help yourself to it. So I'd like to thank Dr. Redmond and the Eastern Great Lakes chapter of the Association of Contingency Planning. Dr. Redmond, do you have any closing comments?
Well, I just want to say I thought this was really excellent. I mean, as we were saying before, you know, it's important for people to understand this, and you know, it's great information. I'm glad that the ACP chapter was able to offer this to our members. And again, if anyone's interested in coming to our September 14th, you can reach me at 917-882-5453. And I think you did a great presentation, and thank you very, very much.
Well, thank you. There's the firestorm.com website. You can reach us at webinars@firestorm.com. My email address is on the slide. If you have any direct questions of me, I'll be happy to answer them for you. If not, just send in your questions and comments, and we will. Someone will get back to you. So I appreciate you taking the time to join us today. I apologize for the communication breakdown today, but remember that proper preparation prevents poor performance. Thank you very much, and have a good rest of the day. Bill?
Thank you, Ken. That will conclude our webinar for today. See you next month.